Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the next half of our event. My name is Azal Juwaid. I'm an account technology strategist at Microsoft United Arab Emirates. I'm very pleased today to welcome the next set of speakers who will help us explore how we can unlock the potential of artificial intelligence, while also maintaining the human element at the heart of the AI revolution. Our next speaker is a man who wears many hats. He has been working tirelessly to highlight the opportunities in the space economy. And also, we have seen Talal Alkaissi pave the way for AI, for generative AI, to revolutionize artificial intelligence across governments in the United Arab Emirates. Please help me welcome Talal Kaissi, Executive Vice President at Core 42.
Good morning. So, as great as that bio sounded, it's hard to try to build me up in any way to follow that act by both Satya and Peng. What an inspiration. So I'll try to at least give you, the good thing about that was a lot of what I was about to cover in terms of AI and trying to demystify it was covered so succinctly by Satya in such an elegant way. So I think I can breeze through some of the attempts that I was trying to figure out how to articulate. My name is Talal Alkaissi. I am now leading the team at Core 42 that's overseeing global product and partnerships. Core 42 is a new part, a new facet within the G42 family. I'll talk a little bit about G42 on an overarching perspective, and then Core 42 specifically in what's changed to kind of ensure everyone is up to speed with the development and what we are trying to accomplish, and the role we're trying to play in this whole AI revolution. So for those who aren't familiar with G42, just to give you some context, we're focused on the AI and cloud computing domain, and we cater to the customer persona that we mostly cater to is the public sector and regulated industries, and we provide a common technology platform and deliver commercial and societal impact. That's the objective that we have across the board within the G42 family. But most people, when they first hear about G42, are curious as to what the 42 is, and many people assume it's 42 companies or 42 products. And I can assure you that there's a little bit more thought that went into it than that, and it is a little bit more exciting. It, in fact, comes from a science fiction novel that was set in the late 70s by Douglas Adams called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, in which the setting was, in the far distant future, a civilization that had advanced so much technologically began harnessing power in the solar system and concentrating it into a supercomputer called Deep Thought. And after asking it what the answer would be to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything, and 7.5 million years of calculating, the answer was 42. So that's where we draw our inspiration. There's no particular significance or meaning behind 42. It became very synonymous with the AI in science fiction and nomenclature, but that's where we drew our inspiration for unlocking not just the answers to the most important questions, but also the knowledge associated with trying to ask the right questions as well. And so I can't even begin to claim that I'd be able to explain what AI is or how it works in its intricacies, but let's boil it down and simplify it to three different things that AI requires. And that's a massive amount of data, powerful infrastructure and compute, and obviously complex algorithms and techniques with either deep learning, machine learning, and other techniques that have helped help derive patterns and make predictions to provide actionable insights and augment human intelligence. And we've seen this in different ways throughout the years. Obviously, AI is not something new, or human augmented intelligence leveraging technology is not something new. We've had calculators for a very long time, and that is providing you a superhuman capability in a narrow function. We have level 2, level 3, and sometimes level 4 autonomous vehicles right now. So my Tesla, for example, drives and can lane keep in a way that's superhuman, can react to things in a way that's superhuman. But that's a narrow function. And obviously, over time, we're seeing this increasingly become more generalized. And we're also seeing glimpses of what that really means and the profound impact that that could have. We already see with GPT and other large language models, when you apply them in certain ways, you're able to create new things, compose poetry, music, draw images, and create art, and write code, as Satya was saying. These are things that are supporting human intelligence, augmenting human intelligence, not replacing them. And it's not something new either. I mean, this has been happening for years right now, with many research papers on how to best optimize unlocking the value of big data sources and producing something that could augment productivity and increase and enhance productivity across multiple different use cases and industries. But what we're seeing today with the advent of generative AI is the confluence of compute, heavy compute, and large language models, and the scaling effect that is inducing, and the output of that confluence being manifested in something that seems quite magical when you use it. And so while maybe 5 years ago we would have thought a generalized form of that intelligence would be decades away, it starts to feel a lot more attainable now, based on what we're experiencing today. So I think if you fast forward 50 years and you look back at this time, I think we would all look back and say, this was that pivotal moment that we're living in. It's hard to fully appreciate that when you're living in that moment, but it is definitely something profound. And so we at G42 are focused on playing a role, not just locally or regionally, but globally, in this pursuit of artificial general intelligence in a safe way, in a responsible way. It's very important to have the guardrails that were discussed earlier by Satya, and I think every company that is in this field has a responsibility to do so in a very safe manner. And our focus on applying AI advancement is mainly and predominantly for societal betterment. That's kind of our key ethos. But it's important to talk about a little bit about the journey and where we came from. Peng mentioned his tenure at MicroStrategy as a CTO, business intelligence and big data company, came here to the UAE, was kind of lured by the visionary leadership and the open lab environment that the UAE provided. And while he was dealing with the likes of Microsoft and Facebook and others that had a massive amount of volume when it came to data sets or the types of things that they had to try to solve for, here he was intrigued by the diversity and coupled diversity of data sets coupled with the open lab environment that was conducive to innovating, and where the government was trying to lean forward in not just taking risks, but developing new mechanisms of how to unlock value with these tools that were pretty nascent back in the time when he came. And that company became what is now Presight, our AI and analytics company. I'll talk a little bit about each of the companies. But if we look at the way we were structured up until 3 weeks ago, or GITEX, when we made an announcement, and I'll talk a little bit about that, you have two foundational pillars: the Applied AI Research Institution, and then you'd have the digital infrastructure. So think about this as the brain power, the muscle power, and then data being the food. So if this is an organism, an analogy of an organism, those are the three components you need to generate AI. And each one of the operating companies within G42 are focused on specific industries, and they all consume massive amounts of data or need that repository and require a massive amount of compute to unlock that value. So the three companies that recently were brought together in a merger over GITEX are Enjazat, Inception, and G42 Cloud. G42 Cloud I had the privilege of leading for the last 2 years. Very lucky that I had the experience to help nurture the Microsoft relationship, which we began discussions about a year ago today. So I'm very, very proud of what we were able to accomplish in a short period of time, relatively speaking. And I'm looking forward to what's going to come next on that. And so Core42, the amalgamation of the three companies that I mentioned, now sits pun intended, at the core of G42 in providing that enablement platform that allows the other G42 companies to benefit from it. And obviously, you see Khazna there at the bottom, which is really what propels us. And I'll talk a little bit about how they've differentiated themselves as well, and why we're able to leverage that. Both we and Microsoft leverage Khazna data centers as a foundational pillar of our business. But this now gives us the opportunity to kind of serve the entire AI value chain. Everything from the data center infrastructure that I mentioned to the compute infrastructure, the cloud, the AI model development component, the enterprise AI and cloud deployment, as well as on the operating company side, applications, and the production of customer and industry-tailored solutions. So it's a really true end-to-end value chain. So Khazna, as I mentioned, is the wholesale data center provider within the G42 family, a joint venture with Etisalat. So it's between G42 and Etisalat, and they have a couple hundred megawatts of capacity, growing at a phenomenal pace, not just locally but also regionally, and have global ambitions as well in introducing capacity there as well. And they're also starting to navigate the complexity around trying to build highly optimized data centers for high-performance compute. And so this is an area that we're doubling down on right now, and I'll show you why in a couple of slides. Core 42, as I mentioned, is now that cloud and AI enablement platform that is well-suited to support the national scale types of programs that Peng was mentioning. And I think this is a very important distinction from many other companies that might do certain things much better than other companies in a single lane. I think in our case, that end-to-end spectrum is something very important. And it starts with cloud, and specifically the sovereign cloud enablement. So sovereignty is a very nuanced term. I think not many people understand exactly what we mean when we say sovereign cloud. And I think in multiple cases, people would assume that if your data is resident in the country, by virtue of that data center being in the country, then you have data residency and sovereignty. But it's not that simple. Sovereignty is the enablement of a protection against extraterritorial jurisdictional control that could be yielded by a foreign government towards technology or infrastructure that is from a company that emanates from that foreign government. So there's a jurisdictional element there. And the only way to solve for that traditionally has been to build your own. I mean, if you're buying the infrastructure, you have to own and operate that infrastructure. You have to have localized operation and maintenance teams. You have to have access controls, physical security, all these things sorted to ensure sovereignty of that data, to ensure no one can access that data except the people that are supposed to access that data, the entities that own that data. And so we've built private clouds for the past few years. We have multiple different flavors of sovereignty, everything from a disconnected environment where it's air-gapped, where for top secret type, anything that needs to avoid any type of leakage whatsoever can have that type of environment. And then you have some connected regions as well that provide more services, but at the same time are inherently limited because we're not a hyperscaler per se. We cannot compare ourselves to a Microsoft, for instance, with the multitude of regions that they have globally and the teams of engineers and the R&D that they spend on service development for their cloud. But on a national scale, we were able to support the public sector and regulated industries in enabling sovereignty. But with that inherent limitation came an opportunity. And that opportunity was to think of creative ways to partner with Microsoft on enabling sovereignty. And that came about at a time where Microsoft had technologies that evolved to a point where we were able to start thinking at that baseline layer of something that Satya mentioned, confidential compute, and how you would leverage encryption at rest, in transit, and in processing, and innovative approaches to key management so that we can enable sovereignty on a public cloud backbone. and build our products on top of that rather than have to do everything from scratch. So we lessened the mundane, burdensome part of what we had to create to enable sovereignty on our end by teaming up with Microsoft and co-developing a product on top of what they already had in terms of a technology solution that provides that compliance assurance to not just the customer, but to the regulator. So we work very closely with the regulators, both federal regulators as well as the sector regulators, to ensure that we are incorporating in our product the tools that they are looking to ensure maintain compliance and enable the entity to be able to leverage the cloud services. So we went from being a cloud service provider to a national cloud operator by virtue of doing that. Another key component of our infrastructure part of the Core 42 business is the Condor AI platform, and a part of which Peng mentioned was the supercomputer. I'll talk a little bit about that we deployed in California recently. But the idea behind Condor is to really not compete per se, but provide an alternative and complement this, servicing the insatiable demand for AI that we're seeing today. And so what we're doing is we're building a heterogeneous AI cloud environment, multi-architectural, multi-geography. The first one, like Peng mentioned, was in California. We're looking at different locations as well, including here in the UAE, and do everything in that spectrum between training to inferencing and anything in between. And so we're creating optionality. So Cerebras, being the partner that was mentioned earlier, is this startup in California that is focused on building these, what they call the wafer scale engine, those big chips. So basically, the one that you see over here is the size of a dinner plate in comparison to the largest GPU that's right next to it. And the idea is that they're able to optimize their hardware for AI training. And when you talk about a GPU, you're looking at a graphics processing unit that was built for gaming mainly, and for graphics processing, and it's in the name, as opposed to an AI-optimized chip that allows for you to do certain things, especially using the on-memory capabilities for your data and for your models, to avoid having the latency that is introduced by having the GPUs depend on complex interconnect that has to move data back and forth to the chip. So from a processing standpoint, this creates efficiencies, not just from an energy standpoint, but from a time to value and even innovation cycles that you'll be able to induce by virtue of doing that. So this is kind of an innovative approach that hardware company had produced, and our partnership with them has enabled in setting up the 4 exaflop supercomputer in Northern California, that we recently announced. And we're not stopping there. Like I said, this is going to be a multi-architectural, multi-geography, and even in this case, we are increasing that capacity, and we'll be making announcements soon in terms of how much we will be increasing it and how we would bring those compute cycles to the market as well to support developers and the AI community to be able to access that. Today, most of the compute is being used for our G42 companies to provide and build services on top of. But what is an exaflop, and how, it's hard without a frame of reference to fully appreciate what an exaflop really is. And an exaflop is 1 quintillion operations per second. That's 18 zeros. I had to count them. And the equivalent of as many calculations as 50 million laptops would be needed to make. So it's quite sizable. And we're talking about 4 of these exaflops. And what we've built in that 4 exaflop supercomputer has become the world's largest and fastest supercomputer. And so we're hoping to continue to build on this and enable. There's another important component associated with that, and that's where you store the amounts of data that you want processed in that. And that's where a company like VAST came in, both from a storage standpoint for petabyte scale storage and high performance storage to be able to interface with that compute, and data management. And this is where I think we're very lucky that we have a partner like VAST that we're working on increasing the scope of partnership with to enable us to have this multi-geography and multi-architectural approach. Another key component of the Core 42 family is what was previously the Inception Applied AI Institute that is now, that traditionally was focused on computer vision, machine learning, NLP, specifically Arabic NLP, which we had a good capability in, and more recently, LLMs. And that's where the model that Satya mentioned, JIS, was developed. And I encourage everyone to meet with, is Dr. Andy Jackson here? There he is, the guy over there with his hand up. Dr. Andy Jackson, who leads that team and has done an amazing thing, leveraging the supercomputer that I mentioned in California, and within, what was it, less than 2 months, standing up a 13 billion parameter model, and there will be more news to come in terms of the scope and scale that we're planning to take this. Using 116 billion Arabic tokens and 279 billion English tokens. It's a bilingual model, but it's the most performant and world's largest open source Arabic LLM. And you'd think, why is that important? Well, if 422 million Arabic speakers globally in 22 countries only have access to 1% of the content on the internet being Arabic, then there's definitely a problem. And that's something we set out to try to solve. And in fact, Andy and his team went out to acquire a massive amount of data sets so that they can digitize things that were in print using our OCR, or optical character recognition technology, and machine vision technology to be able to induce the results that they have. And there are many companies and enterprises and government institutions and use cases right now that are lined up in hopes to be able to use JIS as a foundation model for them to bring their proprietary data sets on top of and use methods like retrieval augmented generation to produce results and insights for their teams and several use cases. The other partnership we recently announced during GITEX was one with OpenAI. And this one's also quite meaningful because this is going to provide us the ability to do some incredible things in unlocking advanced AI capabilities here in the UAE and the broader region. So there will be more of this to come in the coming months, hopefully, in terms of how we are going to operationalize this partnership and bring value to our customers here in the UAE. So in terms of the operating companies in G42, Presight is, as I mentioned earlier, what was the impetus behind G42 being created when Peng first came here and started that business intelligence and big data analytics company. And they now operate in several different sectors where they apply their technologies: public services, financial services, sports. Sports is an interesting one. Everything from the UFC to the cricket team to the UAE bike team, and even F1. We're sponsors of the Mercedes-AMG team, but they're also doing work with F1 in data science to support them and give them that incremental edge that AI can help unlock. So Presight is one of the operating companies within the G42 family. M42 as well is the amalgamation of both Mubadala Health and G42 Healthcare. So Mubadala Health had the point of care institutions, Cleveland Clinic and many other institutions around, plus the G42 Healthcare that were focused on the AI and the digital health component. And you bring those two together and you have some interesting outcomes, medical outcomes that you can induce. So you think of what Peng mentioned with whole genome sequencing and hundreds of petabytes of genomics data at a 30x resolution with multiple technologies that are helping you do that, plus the cloud and the supercompute. You're able to start inducing precision medicine, drug discovery, preventative care, and unlock true secrets of longevity, and do meaningful research with many companies that are interested in accessing that data set and producing value. So M42 is another crown jewel within the G42 family. They also recently announced Med42 large language model, a clinical LLM to support both patients and healthcare providers and augment their ability to access healthcare. Bayanat is the geospatial services company within the family and are focused on everything from intelligent mobility to environmental and climate action, as well as public safety and the space industry. In fact, the space industry that I helped incubate when I first came to G42 is now in full force within Bayanat, and they're working on remote sensing, data, and geospatial analytics. So they take these low Earth orbit constellations that provide imagery, whether it be radar imagery or optical imagery or even RF that comes in, and they are able to utilize the cloud and supercomputers to help derive insights for multiple different use cases across many different industries. And so that's another area that we are obviously very proud of. AIQ is our joint venture with ADNOC and helps us unlock the value that AI can produce for the energy space. So things like reservoir simulations, seismic data analysis, all these, again, very compute-intensive and data-intensive applications that our company can be useful in supporting and unlocking value and helping with the energy transformation vertical across the industry. Internationally, we have aspirations and we have some concrete current projects in multiple different geographies. I mentioned the US in terms of our supercompute deployment. We're also looking at standing up an office over there and deepening that type of engagement and looking at serving a customer base in the US. Africa, we've had multiple projects along with the Presight team at G42 in providing applications and digital sovereignty enablement to several different governments over there, and are working to expand that. Egypt, Turkey, and India are areas that we're opening offices in now and also starting to explore. Saudi Arabia, we have a joint venture with a company called Nesma over there under the Core42 brand previously on the Injazat side. So we're really looking to take what we've built in the UAE and what we've applied in the UAE in different formulations and go out to the market globally and begin to enable and deploy our technologies and services there as well. So I started off with a science fiction novel with an author called Douglas Adams, and I'd like to end with another science fiction novelist called Arthur C. Clarke. And I know Mark, is Mark around? Where's Mark? He's probably getting ready, yeah. So Mark is going to probably go into more depth of Arthur C. Clarke, so I thought I'd tee it up for you. There's one of the Clarke's laws which says any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And it really does feel that AI falls into this category. And if you look at the greatest inventions of all time, we can debate them all day. But I think there are several that stand out. Fire being one of them. Not many people would think of fire as an invention, but fire was an invention, or at least the ability to make fire and tame it and use it in ways to not just keep wildlife away, but also to cook food, which actually helped increase nutrition that went to the brain and helped us with our evolution towards the intelligent beings that we are today. So if you equate that together, I think it's a very compelling reason why this should be considered one of the greatest inventions. A lot of people talk about the wheel being an important invention. I'd have to agree. I think it is somewhat important and innovative as well in its own right. And a lot of people also say the best thing since sliced bread. So sliced bread is a good invention. I'm on a keto diet, so I don't know if I absolutely agree, but let's just put it there for the sake of it. But I would argue and subscribe to those who feel language is one of the most important inventions that humanity's ever created. And I say that because I think if you think back to prehistoric times when there were hunters and gatherers and there were much stronger beings than humans out there, the ability to congregate in groups and the ability to communicate is probably what brought us to where we are today and what allowed us to innovate and go through the industrial revolutions, the agricultural revolutions, everything else that humanity's been able to attain. And it's that human collective coupled with that underlying fabric of language and communication that has propelled us to where we are. So for me, that's why I feel what we're seeing today with generative AI, while it might feel trivial or we get desensitized to these things much quicker. We've seen the internet age, we've seen the iPhone. I look at the world in a pre-iPhone and a post-iPhone way. My daughter will never look at a world without an iPhone. It's very difficult for them to fathom, but we've become desensitized. Every year something new is coming out. But when generative AI first started to make waves, only around a year ago, We now see upgrades and incremental things and improvements, and we still feel that, okay, yeah, this is something we're expecting, and that this is normal. It's anything but normal. Think of Isaac Newton or Albert Einstein and the years of work that they had to put into learning and consuming books of physics and mathematics to come up with general relativity or to come up with calculus. And when they came up with those things, think of how all of us have been able to build on top of those platforms. And then think of what generative AI is showing us glimpses of. Today, it's dependent on large amounts of data. And the output, while it seems conversational, it seems magical, is actually very easily explainable and probabilistic and statistical. Even speech is a form of, if you look at it algorithmically, a low bandwidth compression algorithm. I'm getting a lot of sensory input through my different sensors, compressing that in my brain and trying to articulate what I'm thinking and feeling. And there's a lot of lossiness in that. When we see ChatGPT spit out a response to a question so succinctly and in a way that makes it feel like new knowledge, poetry, everything else, knowing even that behind it comes a huge amount of data and probability, it still gives you an immense amount of appreciation for what humans can build and what could come next, and how an entity like that could start to recursively self-improve and build itself and build new knowledge. And that new knowledge can help us solve cancer, can help us solve the biggest problems in the world, even from a political standpoint. And that's something that's quite profound. So I'd like to leave you with that, and thank you once again for giving me the opportunity to share a little bit about what we're doing at G42.